Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. This is Darren Cunningham with Comprise. I'm here with my esteemed colleagues who I'll be introducing you to in a moment. Dominica Garcia and Steve Moore, also from Comprise, and we are here to talk about Comprise and NetApp. And the theme of this webinar is consistent with the theme of the conference, the Netapp Insight conference. That was a fantastic virtual event that we were a sponsor of just a couple of weeks ago, which is more cloud, less cost. So thanks for joining. We're going to dive in and spend most of the time showing you the power and potential and possibilities of Comprise in live demonstrations. But let's first just jump into a quick introduction. I know many of you on the call know us and know us well. Others are just getting familiar with what we do and the value we can deliver. And so at a high level, Comprise is really focused on analytics-driven data management. And what does that mean? That means that what we want to help you with is to first get smarter about where your data lives, right? Give you that clear picture, and what we say is analyze and plan first, right? Many organizations, most of you on this call are, I think all of you are just overloaded in data, right? The growth of data is exponential and overwhelming. So how do you really understand, what is the current state of your data as it's growing, and how do you make smarter decisions about where to move that data? So whether it's archiving, replication, migrating, as you're moving to the cloud, as you're looking for, the most efficient and effective place to move your data to, Comprise wants to help you get smarter, and that's what we call intelligent data management. So we're going to talk about that in today's presentation quite a bit. Just a couple of things to highlight. Comprise has been recognized by GigaOM as an outperformer in this category of unstructured data management. And I just wanted to highlight this point that, as they say, Comprise can seamlessly optimize the storage infrastructure while improving the ability to reuse data and increase its value over time. And that's really what we're all here to do, is how to get more value out of our data investments. Now, we have been a NetApp partner since 2014. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to bring in my colleague, Dominica Garcia, who's been managing the partnership with NetApp for some time. So Dominica, why don't you tell us about some of the customers you've been working with and just a little bit about your experience with Comprise and NetApp.
Hey, Darren, I'm just excited to be here. So yes, I can talk about our partnership. We've been a partner of NetApp since conception of Comprise. We've attended the last 5 NetApp Insights. The customers that you see on screen today have spoken for us at the last 3 Insights that we actually attended with NetApp. And all 3 of them are multi-petabyte customers of not only Comprise, but also of NetApp. There's a couple of highlights of each of these customers that I want to mention. Specifically, PacBio is a genomic sequencing producer, and we actually help them archive data, stale data off their NetApp to move it into a StorageGRID type product. We've also helped them save over 60% of their storage costs. With Yale University, they actually have an interesting use case. They are they actually do chargebacks to each of their departments and do storage as a service for Yale itself. So they show each of these departments how they can save on overall storage costs to manage their data with Comprise. And they use Comprise to archive data to StorageGRID off of NetApp. With Qualcomm, they are just, they're a massive deployment for Comprise and also for NetApp. And they mostly use this for our analytics portion of our tool and migration. And I think Steve will get into a little bit more detail about what that use case is.
Awesome. So some great names, some great ROI, and reduction in overall total cost of ownership. So great stories. And as you said, I think Steve's going to highlight a few more examples from these and other customers. Before we get over to you, Steve, just want to talk about NetApp Insight. I think all of us right now are trying to determine these virtual events are quite different than the live shows. I think companies have adapted well to making them interactive and providing a great experience for attendees. The attendee numbers were really impressive that NetApp shared with us. We were a proud sponsor, a Sapphire sponsor of the show, and it was really clear this year, I think more than any other year, it was all about the cloud. So Dominica, any kind of thoughts from you? You've been at these for a number of years.
Yeah.
The difference between virtual and live.
Darren, you're absolutely right. It is all about the cloud for NetApp. I think over the last few years, there's been a progression of them supporting all of the cloud vendors and supporting their customers to go to this hyper cloud deployment, whether that's public or private cloud. And I think along with Comprise, we also support all of the cloud vendors, and we're supporting NetApp in their mission to help their customers be more cloud native. We just released support for CVO and CVS for NetApp for both GCP and AWS, and then we also released support for NetApp Azure Files, which is what the slide you just popped up, Darren.
Keeping you moving, yeah. I wanted to show that press release, but yeah, back on the previous slide. So some great announcements from NetApp on their shift to the cloud, but we also made some big news at the show, which was announcing trying to address this demand for file data management in the cloud, and so we announced new capabilities for Microsoft Azure Files and Azure NetApp Files. With the goal of accelerating migration to NetApp, and I think our actual press release talked about how we are able to do that 27 times faster than other solutions, whether that's kind of homegrown or other tools in the market. So a big announcement for us. Any other comments you'd add about this news?
No, I know Steve will get into this a little bit later, but we can support many of these tools not only just with our migration tool, but also with our archive tool. And I know Steve's going to give a great demo about it later, so I'll save the thunder for him.
Fantastic. Well, so don't go away. I'll definitely want to have you stay on for some commentary and talk through what this means for NetApp customers. But Steve Moore, why don't you introduce yourself and let's hand it over to you to dive in.
Hi, Darren. I'm Steve Moore. I cover channel alliances, SE operations. I'm kind of the sweeper on the soccer field. Get to do a little bit of everything for Comprise. And excited to be here because I work with NetApp quite a bit with Dominique, and we've done quite a bit over the last few years with NetApp and looking to do more. Now, are you seeing my screen okay?
We got you.
Awesome. So people are somewhat familiar with Comprise. If you're not, we are a company that manages unstructured data, and our focus primarily the last several years has been about on-prem data getting to the cloud. So we refer to that as our hybrid data management tool. And now we're turning that focus towards the cloud as well and being able to present a lot of information, help move data. So management and mobility are two big things. And being able to do this holistically across both environments is where Comprise is really heading and what we're looking to do with this product here. And I think we're at kind of an inflection point for data. We kind of went through that a while back with servers. We used to put servers on lots of racks, individual applications and everything. And then we, as an industry, consolidated those into virtual servers and things. Up to this point, we've been putting data into a lot of big, a lot of little systems or big monolithic systems and just dropping it all in there, not really thinking much about the data. Nobody likes to clean their room. Nobody likes to clean their data in their systems for those. But now we're getting to the point where so much data is coming in so rapidly. You drive a car, it generates a log. A switch does a transfer, that generates a log. You place an order on a system, that creates more data. These phone calls are recorded for service and support. That all creates data. So you go to a hospital. I just refinanced my house and I had to sign like 40 forms. That's tons of files that all have to get stored and managed. And now companies are trying to figure out how to address this. And we've had companies that look to move to the cloud and move data up there, only to find that you just can't do a bulk move and everything's going to be fine up there, and had to start to move it back. So we see companies looking for tools to kind of help them be able to manage and address both of these arenas and be able to move information efficiently between the different environments. And so we see that, and we see that in statistics from a lot of Gartners and others, that companies are heading that direction and want a way to manage their data. I don't think companies will ever be all one or all the other, but we definitely are getting a lot of questions from customers about data management for them. And a big question that always comes up first is, how can you help us save money for the environment? And Comprise, what you're going to see in what we do is, we first help with understanding that and understanding the space. So now we can help them see, what the cost is to have it on those big platforms, or the cost of the backups environments, or the handling of the tapes and everything else. We can start to put some numbers to that. Plus, many companies don't really have a good feel for what kind of data is out there on those systems, so we help them address that too. And by looking at that, we can start to put some things into place that helps our customers save 40, 50, 60% of their data spend and budget for it out there. And that's money that they desperately need to put into other things right now as well, security and services and help and people, keeping people in jobs. So we definitely have a great way of helping companies save money. I'll show you that with our edit cost model and the tool and things like that too. But like I said, everybody knows, cloud's got to be a part of their strategy today. So how can Comprise help with a cloud strategy? And we can certainly do that by identifying, the valuable data. The data, the applications they want to move there, that's going to need data to move with it too. Where does that data sitting? It might be on a server with that application, or it might be on a lot of end user servers that we want to pull that together and send it up there too. So we can certainly help with preparing for the cloud, planning, pricing for the cloud on the data side of things, and being able to build up that plan for them overall. And then what data should be moved to the cloud? We can help customers with our deep analytics be able to find that data in that valuable set and be able to tag it and start to take some sort of actions with it and things like that too. So Comprise is really, like I said, looking to work across both of these platforms on-prem and in the cloud. Once it gets up there, you might need to be able to move it back down or move it from one cloud to another cloud. So we can certainly help with all that between our migration capabilities, our archiving capabilities, copy capabilities, and our confining capabilities. Just because it's up there doesn't mean it shouldn't be deleted. We need to find the good data from the chaff data and get rid of the chaff data as well. And Comprise is a way to help with that with confining operations. And more lastly is just how do we continue to be able to manage these environments and this unstructured data in both of these worlds moving forward. And that's really the direction. And that's why I was super excited to join Comprise. Wasn't really seeing anybody address this holistically in the market space. So we're now able to come in and be able to help customers understand both environments, and we're building the tools to be able to connect the environments and make it all transparent and seamless for the end users overall. Now, one of the great places to start for all this is to take a look at your current environment. Look at the file servers that are in there. Many of our customers, there's just too few people to manage all the data that's going into these systems. And, end users and groups and departments come along and request another share. Had one customer in Australia, and you guys have seen this all the time, they needed a place to dump all their Oracle backups. So, the administrator made that share, they dumped, a ton of data into that space, and then they had completely forgotten about it. And we came along and did an assessment for them, and we showed them that, that space was the largest space on their NetApp system. And it was something that hadn't been touched in over 3 years. And then they were like, what is that data? And then they started to remember the story, and then they remembered why they created it. And that's data that was being snapped and replicated and backed up every day. So when you put a file into a system, it's not just stored there once, but there's that hidden data tax of having to back it up and manage it, and people have to maintain it and stuff too. And it's only until you start to take a look at it and investigate the systems that you start to see that. And Comprise makes that pretty easy. We have a fairly lightweight system that can go in, just a virtual machine, 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of memory, 100 gigs of disk space, and we can deploy one or we can deploy multiples because they're stateless machines that can cooperate and work together, and then take them and start to analyze the market space, analyze the file systems that are out there. And it's non-invasive, doesn't write or change anything on those systems. We read those systems just like any other client reads those systems, just like you mount it with your laptop. But we'll walk the directory trees and we'll collect all the metadata. There's about 15 different things that we collect up and summarize up, and from that we can put that into a number of reports that can be outputted to give you the information you need. Like the gentleman at Yale who wanted to be able to do chargebacks for his departments. He didn't, the professors, they get the grants, they get the designs, they're coming to him to create shares to put the space in there. He does that. He sets them up with backup, but he doesn't know what the data is in there. So this starts to give him the tools to see that. And now he has the reports to be able to track that and look at that information and to be able to do chargebacks to his customers. And he can see what's on tier 1, he can see what's in the archive pool and work with those systems as well. Qualcomm, 85 petabytes of data. Yeah.
A quick question. So a question came in, and I wanted to just remind folks they can use the chat panels for questions. But I know our focus today is on NetApp because of the NetApp Insight conference. But can you comment on our ability to support other systems? I think there's a few logos there, but the question is Comprise only used for NetApp?
No, we are, again, holistic across the whole environment. So, and the great thing about us is it's all standards-based. You know what virtualization is, so that's what we deploy our servers in. We communicate NFS and SMB protocols, SIPs, to read the NAS systems, much like any client. So any system out there that supports those, we can pretty much read and do the analysis for. And then on the archiving side, we can write to those S3 systems. So we're quite open and quite generic with what we do. So the only thing you really have to learn about Comprise is the GUI interface. But let me show you what that is.
And then one other just to park or address now is what happens to production data when Comprise is doing its analysis? So you can either hit that now or as you go through.
Yeah, we can hit that right now, actually, because what Comprise does is mounts the system just like any other client does. And then as Comprise goes through and crawls the file system looking for the metadata that we're going to summarize into these charts and graphs, we try and do that as a background non-obtrusive task. So we've actually written into the code to watch the response times to our requests. And if they start getting longer, we start putting more delay into our requests so that we're not impacting the production environment. And if you get to the point where you had something that was truly critical that you needed to make sure, all CPU cycles were dedicated on that, you can pause our process. So you have those controls as well. But, when it comes to doing the analysis, we don't look to take the environment over. We want to be a background task and to start generating some results. And the other part about generating those results is you don't have to wait for Comprise to walk the full tree to finally see the results. The really cool thing in what we do is we'll start showing, the information based upon what we've collected so far. So once we get a good sample size of the environment, we can start to predict out, how many files there are, how the different age ranges of the files and things like that. So very quickly, you can start to see a lot of great information about your environment. And then if you stare at the screen long enough, what you'll notice is the little sections will kind of adjust as we read more data and get more fine-tuned. So it's like zooming in a microscope. You start a little blurry, but you can go in there and dial it in and start to see the actual data by the time it completes. You've got the real numbers in there. And with that, you start to see, on our plan page, the overview of your environment and start to see the different ages of the files and the numbers for them and the percentages of what we're looking at for the systems. So here's immediately you can start having a great conversation about, how much cold data there is versus hot data, what's your retention periods, things like that as well. And these ranges that I'm mousing over here, these ranges can be customized to your environment as well. We have kind of a default from greater than 3 years down to less than a month. But you can do this down to as little as a week to as many as 15 years. So this can all be customized to what your needs are. If you wanted to say, look at like a 7-year retention period or something, you could set one of these for like 7 years and greater than 7 years and see how much data that would actually be, and then 5 years and 3 years and stuff. So you can tune that environment this way. Another way to tune what you're looking at is through our little filter up here. This is like our zoom in and zoom out. We can look across all shares. And you see I got 3 petabytes of data out there to take a look at. Or I can look at shares that we put in our plan, which is the little activities over here I'll talk some more about in a few minutes. Or we can drill down to a specific share and just look at just the one share in the environment and see the information associated with it. So here's where we can drill into that and put some information in for that too. And not only do we give you the donut here, but we give you actually more useful data over here. And this is where you can start to see top users, top file types, file sizes, owners. So this gives you a great summary of information about your environment and see who it is. If you're going to be moving some data, maybe we want to talk to A-Best and maybe see about cleaning some of his older data before we move it, and then talk to him about maybe an outage window that he may have to experience or something like that. So we can start identifying key people to have discussions with about their data, or ask A-Best why he has so much. That customer I was talking about earlier that had all the data sitting in one directory, it was kind of like this, except it was all dark blue. He had a great big bar of dark blue of the Oracle data that they had put out there into their environment. So you start to have a lot of this data, a lot of this information. This all can be downloaded through various reports and CSV files to be able to take a look at and store off if you'd like. There's also the ability to come over to metrics and kind of see the health of your environment. Sometimes people use, you won't believe it, but use actually really long file names like paragraphs for file names and stuff. And there are some limits in operating systems and stuff. So sometimes it's good to be able to find that. I was working with one account where they knew they had files they moved from Novell to Linux to Windows, and they knew, all those names and protocols are a little different from one. So you can, if you start like that, have a file you can't access anymore. And so through metrics here, you can start to identify those sorts of issues and other issues and things like that as well in an environment And that may be really handy if you're looking to do a migration or copy some data up to the cloud or something like that too. So we give you a lot of great analysis tools in here, as well as a tool to really drill in on these 11 different criteria and really filter in to just a particular set of files that you want to find, identify, and take a look at. So here I've got, I'm looking at one server. I'm going to look for his log files on that system, and I can start to see how many there are, and then I can do a quick little view and see where they're located and who owns them and that sort of stuff. So here's, again, where we can get into that data and understand it really well to start to plan things and make decisions about things. And then we can tag that data so that we can come back and find it very quickly later, too. So our plan analysis gives us something of a bit of a summary view that we can take actions with, and our deep analytics gives you the ability to really drill into systems, too. I'm going to switch back over to the presentation real quick, and we'll pick up with this slide here. And that is, we talked about on-prem and understanding that environment, but, there's a lot that goes on in the cloud environment, too. There's the ability now for Comprise to come in and set up a system in the environment and be able to come in and investigate the cloud systems. We know there's shadow IT out there. There's customers that have, had to move on their own, so they've opened their own accounts. They've got a number of buckets within them, or, the company set up this arena and, the end users have just been working away and working around IT. So often IT doesn't really have good visibility into what's happening into all the cloud systems out there. So Comprise now gives you the tools and the abilities to take a look at that and see that environment. So I'll show you what that looks like right here. So we can give you those reports and those sorts of things that you were seeing similarly before with the on-prem tool. We now have our cloud management tool where we can come along and we can identify data stores. For example, we can come and add that new account, so I could put in Darren's account information and look at his platform and see his information, select his buckets and things like that. And then we'll come back and we'll start to see, just how many buckets he's got out there and what he's been doing with them all. So companies are really lacking this view into the cloud environment to see what customers are doing with their data. And a lot of these are fairly new environments, so often they don't necessarily have a lot of older data in them, but they seem to have a lot of buckets of them. But you know what's going to happen. The same behaviors they have on-prem, they're going to have in the cloud. And as time goes by, this stuff's going to age out and need to be cleaned up and addressed and worked with as well. So what we're doing is we're providing an ability to start to see that and stay on top of those environments and start to look at them, start to plan for them, start seeing the ages of the files, what's hot, what's not, and also be able to set up some plans to tier some of that data off to other platforms in the environments, or if we need to, do S3 to S3 migrations to move them from one platform to another platform if we needed to. So we can help customers, again, make that management of all these environments all together seamlessly, much easier to work with as well. And here we have, again, the deep analytics to be able to drill into all the different little characteristics and items in here to find the data that you're looking for when that environment, especially when you weren't the one, the IT administrators aren't necessarily the ones creating it, but they need to find it and identify it, things like that. So again, we give a number of ways of developing filters to be able to filter into the information. And again, we give a way to be able to view the top items in that, or we can download the CSV, much like the on-prem. We can see the top 5,000 there, or we can use the API if we do have to get 309 million files out to identify them and work with them from that. So we have our cloud data management product today, and then where we're heading as a company is all this is just going to be under one screen. So like I said, how do I manage the data sprawl on-prem and the cloud all together? We're looking to put all this together and give you the savings information and everything associated with it as well.
Hey,
So,
Steve, just a question for you. Every organization, every organization's at a different stage in their journey to the cloud. And as soon as you started to show on-prem options, people were asking about cloud. So where do you find that they typically come to us? Have they already moved some data to the cloud and then realized, wow, they're spending more than they thought, or is it, they're about to do a migration? Is there any trend from the, where and when organizations start to work with Comprise and see the most value?
We have traditionally been focused more on the on-prem part of things and taking a look at the data down there. So up to this point, a lot of customers that we've been working with are on-prem and going to the cloud. And that's where we're going to talk next about mobility and management and movement of getting data to copy and archive and put data into the cloud. But now we have customers, now that we've come to the cloud and the cloud analysis part, we have new customers coming to us who want to understand all they have up here and what's going on with the buckets and stores. So this is an emerging area for us, and like I said, we're looking to bring it all together and be that tool that kind of helps bring them. So end users are kind of in a crush between the data in the cloud and the data on-prem. And data in the cloud is just super easy. There's really no limits. And nature abhors a vacuum, so people are filling it up as quickly as they can. That's where IT infrastructures need the help to be able to, like I said, load that account and see just how many buckets they got and what kind of data they got and what's going on in there. So this is a rapidly emerging area for us, and it's just a natural extension to what we've been doing already of moving data up there and now starting to help people understand what's up here and be able to make choices with that.
Makes a lot of sense.
Those kind of choices are.
Before you jump into a little more on how that all works, I just want to maybe bring Dominica back in on the partnership side. I know all those logos on the top left you work very closely with. Any comment on how we're working with the cloud infrastructure partners?
Absolutely. I mean, we've actually been working with many of these cloud vendors for quite a few years now, and I believe we're at a premier level with AWS, also with Azure and GCP. Wasabi is actually up and coming, but there is one cloud vendor that's not listed up there, which is IBM Cloud, that we're also working with. So we are truly vendor agnostic, and that's, if there's anything that you guys take away from this webinar today, is that we are vendor agnostic. We work through standard protocols, so we are working with all the cloud vendors, we work with all the on-premises vendors, and we are really a way to look at a heterogeneous environment to show you exactly what your data is doing in any given environment so that you can make better decisions around where it needs to move and what you want to do with it.
Great point. Thanks. Back to you, Steve.
Certainly. So as you see, first is understand and know your data, and then be able to move and take action with your data. And again, this is where we start to show some savings for customers in their environments, is because as we work with some of the data, say, that's on-prem, we can start to transparently store it in lower cost storage, whether that's a lower cost NAS or a private cloud or a public cloud. And the really cool thing is from the end user's perspective, it's all completely transparent to them. They're still going to their platform and accessing their data. And we're doing some of that with lifecycle management in some of the cloud platforms too. So again, they can go to their platform, not have to worry about it, and Comprise provides that glue that keeps it all seamless. And that's starting to give companies the ability to make choices in their data storage pools and make some price savings. And that's where we kind of get to that 40–56% savings for customers, is because these systems tend to be 80%, 60, 70, 80% cold data that's not being touched in a year or more. And as an industry standard, if it's gone about 60, 90 days with nobody accessing it, odds are probably nobody's accessing it anymore. But yet we're in such a habit and a routine of just, I need another 200 terabytes, I need another 500 terabytes, and just adding that into these environments. But then, in the background, more tape has to be added, somebody's got to handle all that stuff and everything else too. So we start to give companies the ability to start looking at the data management instead of looking at the hardware and being able to make the choices. And it might be that, I have data in the on-prem environment that I want to start developing a cloud application for, and I want to be able to copy the data and put it into the public cloud or a private cloud. So we can do that, run those cloud tools against it, some of the historical trending and analytics and things like that. So, with Comprise, we can, they can choose to set up a copy and put the data up there and copy it up there and run that type of tool and analysis against it. So a lot of flexibility. And again, across all these different platforms, we work together. So, at the end, Comprise kind of brings together that ability to do some archiving for some great savings in cost and money. We'll move that colder data off to lower cost storage, but we don't have to change how our business functions and how our end users access it. Or, we had some legal firms came to us and said, when court cases are over and they're over, we wanted to take that data out and archive it, but take it away from the end users. So we call that move without links, and we can do that sort of activity as well for customers. Or we might want to, put data on another location, a copy of it, or be able to reposition the data and stuff. So we're looking to do those sorts of things. Customers are always migrating data. As I mentioned before, with Qualcomm with 85 petabytes, you know they got storage pools expiring every year and that need to be moved from one platform to another. And that's really how they kind of found us, was they put out an RFP for that, but they said, we really should have some data management tools. So they just added that in there just to see what would come back. And that's how they found Comprise and how we got together to be able to do that. And PacBio, you know, the one that Dominique talked about earlier as well, they're in genomics and genomic sequencing space. And as they deploy more systems, their data, new generations of those systems is coming out with more and more data. And it's like a 2x, 4x increase in capacity, but their budgets aren't going up 2x, 4x. So they need ways to position high-performance systems in here and be able to get the data that they've captured, but they don't really need to work with just yet off to, you know, a lower-cost storage platform. And that's where some of the replicate and archive functionality comes in. And then companies are looking to do data lakes and big analytic packages and things like that. So being able to tag data and identify that data so they can figure it out and move it to where it needs to be has become real important too. And a big differentiator for Comprise is that when we do things like archiving, we archive in what we call a native format. And that means that you can use the native tools to be able to go and see that data. It's in a read-only format, but you can see it and work with it. So that gives great flexibility. We had, it was the team at Yale that came to us and said, you know, we're running NetApp and we're running fabric pools, and that's really helping us, you know, in the near term with keeping, you know, what's hot on flash and what's warm in disk and what's cool in StorageGRID, but that's a block focus, and it's focusing on snaps. And Comprise doesn't work on a block level and doesn't focus on snaps. What we're looking for is really the 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old and plus data to kind of clean that up and get that into where, you know, nobody's accessing it, and get it to where it's on a more cost-effective platform like StorageGRID, and work on a file basis. So it's actually really complementary, the two. One's kind of helping in the tiering and the efficiency of the system, and then we're helping to keep the overall environment running clean and healthy, and taking that workload off the administrators of having to go find that data and clean it and move it and everything else too. And the same thing came together for PacBio. They didn't want to have to stop and ask the scientists to archive the data. They wanted a tool that could do it automatically. And that's where Comprise comes in and does that part for them. So just to hop over here real quick to show you how Comprise does that, we do that through what we call our plan editor over here. And through here we can identify various shares that we want to work with. So we can come in and select our shares and put them into the plan. Of those shares, we can choose if we want to archive them, and we can pick our ranges. And as we start to pick those ranges, you'll notice that if I do all shares in plan over here, you'll notice the plan kind of adjusts. Now, I might not have enough shares to kind of impact our line here, but you can start to see the impact to what the potential capacity is that could be archived off, showing you that, you know, we could free 61% of our overall data in our plan off of the tier 1 systems and get that into lower cost systems for savings. And if you go to edit cost model down here, this is where we can put the cost of the systems in today. And then we can pick, you know, do we want to send it to the cloud, or do we want to send it to an on-prem target? That could be another NAS or an object store platform, and put in the hardware costs for that. And then we'll show, you know, what the 3-year savings would be from that. And then down here we have the ability to really kind of drill in and take a look at that. You know, at the end of year 1, if we just continued on a normal path, you know, our cost on source would be about $8 million, and, you know, our growth rate is about 20% at this point. If we had moved over to moving, you know, 60% of the data off to lower cost storage at $200 a terabyte instead of $700, it's $500 savings in there. So you see, we bring our costs down for that environment. And that's what we look to leverage over the years and over the time to calculate into these numbers up here. And by moving data off of the tier 1 platform, we're also generating an opportunity for some backup savings too. If we've got it off into something that's geo-dispersed, data integrity and protected, we can, you know, free that up from the backup space. And again, the way we kind of do that is with symbolic links so customers can still see it. So it's more efficient for their backup and for their backup environments as well. So it generates savings from that too. So this is how we kind of get to that 60% savings number that I was talking about earlier for customers and their budgets, and being able to save them some money in budgets and free dollars for other activities and things too. So we have the ability to do some archiving. We can do some copying. Mm-hmm.
Quick question. I mean, this to me was just the aha moment, and you know, I kind of jokingly call it the Comprise surprise. I mean, how shocked are people when they see this? I mean, do they know the customers you're working with, do they know they have this problem, or they kind of think they do, and then we confirm it? Like, what's the reaction when you first show this to organizations for the first time?
It's astounding and embarrassment a little. It's astounding because they haven't really thought about the systems and the platforms in this way. And then sometimes, like I said, you kind of find that folder or file like that Oracle was for them, and they're like, oh yeah, we should have done something about that. And so there's it's a big moment, and then to that end, that's where we have to help customers kind of understand this space. And so what you're going to see in a little bit is that we offer a bit of an assessment, a free trial to kind of take a look at this and start to see what's going into the system and what's going into the environment. And the really cool thing is the customer can put their own numbers into this. So it's not some marketing number or a sales, from some sales vendor or something. They can put their own numbers in here and make their own decisions about this. And our Comprise team will help them through that and help them kind of size that. And then you can generate the reports from that to be able to show to management to explain why you need to add more storage, but how you can add it in a more cost-effective way for the environment and what you're going to do for the justifications and things. So you see we have the raw data down here that could go into your own reports, or we have a little PDF that kind of gives you a view of the screenshot here that you can include in your reports and analysis too. So it's pretty revealing, and it is a lot of data that starts to show up that customers can start to work with. And then what they do is they tend to start with a kind of a subset of space. They may have, a couple of petabytes of space, but they'll start with, 500 terabytes to a petabyte or so and start, bringing in the systems, analyzing them, and then start to move into the archiving portion of it. And then as they get that understood and see the value for it, they'll start doing more and more as well. So we've been seeing that quite a bit too.
No, thanks. That's helpful. I mean, I just think having that, that tool built in, really you're building a business case in the product. I haven't seen anything like that before. So I think that's really powerful and should help our champions kind of, as you said, kind of internally show the potential here.
Very definitely. And then you see here we're tying, the on-prem to the cloud. And then with the CDM tool I was just showing you, that's where we can look at the cloud and see what's going there and being able to tie that back to the on-prem stuff. And then, like I said, in the longer run of things, we're looking to bring all of these screens back together into one tool. We're not looking to have a cloud tool and an on-prem tool. We want one tool to be able to manage all the unstructured data for customers. Again, to keep it simple, keep it straightforward, works off of best practices. So glad to have the team kind of explain to you just how we do all that. And again, it's running intuitively in the background. Once you set that plan up, you don't have to continue to monitor or anything like that. It'll continue looking for the old code data, keeping systems efficient and moving forward. And you can also use that data to kind of project your growth and your new projects and things like that too. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it. We're kind of coming to a wrap. So just, but yeah, really good stuff. A couple of slides to kind of finish up real quick. We've kind of talked about how Comprise works. These are some areas, we've kind of talked heavily about being able to optimize storage and being able to do that transparent archive and do those cost savings and stuff. There's full migration capabilities in there, NFS to NFS, SMB to SMB, S3 to S3. So all in one tool, one interface, one family of products there to keep it all consistent. And as you saw the migration, I don't know if I showed you that, the migration interfaces are identical between the two. So you don't have to relearn a tool or anything like that between them. So much to show you in so little time. Again, leveraging copy, we can do a number of things with it, get data to where it needs to be processed. And like I said, that thing that really separates us from the crowd is being able to put data, particularly for archiving it up, in a whole format. So a Word file was on the NAS as a Word file up in the cloud and able to work with it from there. And companies can start to gain value from it too. Oops, I didn't mean to do that, I meant to do this. To get started and where to begin with Comprise, it's really simple. Just go to comprise.com. I probably should have put that on the page. And then from there, you'll see a little click for a free trial, and that'll bring you over to this screen. And so you just come into here, click and choose if you want to look at our hybrid solution, our on-prem to cloud, or if you want to look at our cloud solution. We'll give you the ability to kind of look at a certain amount of space, give you some feedback on that space, and we kind of extrapolate, what it might mean to the environment overall. But this is kind of a do-it-yourself environment. Just click on that. It'll set up the environment. You can put in your
AWS, Azure, or Wasabi accounts, and it'll give you feedback on it. And with the NAS costs, our field teams will help you set up. We can set up that observer in literally, 45 minutes to a half an hour. We have a little call ahead of time to kind of make sure everything's ready. But after that, and later that afternoon, like I said, you're seeing the environment, you're seeing some numbers for it, and you can start to see and put in your costs and numbers and see some savings from it. We do that quite often, just a day or two process. You want to learn more about the Comprise nuts and bolts? We do have a Comprise Technical Professional program that'll go through and give you a really good hands-on introduction into the product and get you familiar with everything that we're doing, not only through some of the setup and some of the analysis and the reports that we generate. We have some little lab exercises for it. We'll show you how to do migrations. We'll give you an introduction to the cloud tools and everything else. So we can get you certified, Comprise certified, Technical Professional certified, in about a day. So it's 2-3 hour sessions for it. So a great course, a great introduction for it. So to that end, let me pause and see if there's any other final questions in the environment.
Yeah, a couple of questions and great overview. And you mentioned there's a lot more we can show. We'd certainly love to kind of dive deeper with folks. They can visit comprise.com and schedule a demo with our experts. But one question is, in an optimal environment, what are your scan rates?
We can scan about a petabyte in a day because we're super efficient at walking through the directory tree, and we're looking for specific sets of metadata that we'll bring in and summarize and put back up to the environment. And like I said, the big key for us is you don't have to wait for the scans to complete to see the results. We start getting results right away for the environment as well. Okay.
That's good. And another one, you mentioned transparency and symbolic links. Can you just talk a little bit about that transparent capability, or what's unique about that for Comprise, and what matters to customers?
Yeah. The traditional approach for archiving is to put a device in the data path or into the storage subsystems, or uploading software onto individual systems themselves that starts to identify cold data. And then if you're going to take the data off of the system, you got to leave something behind to say where to go get the data. So you need that little bingo card there. And many companies up to this point, the traditional way was to do that with stub files. And stub files are vendor unique and they're proprietary. Sometimes they're linked to a database, and so then you got to have the stub file and the database up and going. And databases are cool, but when you start looking at petabytes of data, that's millions upon millions of files, which kind of pushes databases a bit. So what we chose to do was leverage some of the newer technologies. And like I said, this is how Comprise gets to have a fresh approach and more holistic approach, is because everybody knows what a shortcut is. You have them in Windows. You have a reference to where the file is stored somewhere else. So what we do is we put a shortcut behind instead of a stub file. An operating system knows what a shortcut is. Microsoft wrote the code for that for Windows. The Linux community wrote it for Linux. So we don't have to put any agents up there or anything for it. When they come to that shortcut, they'll follow that. That'll bring them to our observers. And our observers will then direct and collect the data that they need that's been archived and send it back to the end users from there. So here again, the end user sees in his directory tree all of his files. It's just the stuff we've archived off has that little shortcut symbol on it. But same file name, same old date, it's just the capacity says 0 beside it. But they can double click on that, and then it'll launch, we'll collect the data and bring it up. So nothing changes for them. A double click on my Word doc that's been archived, we'll hand it back to them and present it up to them as well. Now another question is, if I do that a lot, will it rehydrate? And so you can set a policy in there to, if a number of people start hitting it again, it'll rehydrate automatically. Or you might be like, accounting's got to do a 2015 audit. You can do a bulk recall of a number of files or a share to put them back into place and give them a retention period as well, or how long to leave them there, so they can do that sort of stuff too. So we make that pretty easy and automated for customers as well.
Awesome. So we have just one more question. It's getting a lot of questions start coming in at the end. Question about APIs. Do end users have full access to the API, and just generally on our approach to APIs? Yeah, as we get you set up with a Comprise license and everything, we get you set up into our portal, and our portal has a ton of information about how to deploy Comprise, manage and work with Comprise, and inside all of that is full APIs. Pretty much everything you can do through the GUI can be done through the APIs, actually a little more.
So we have that available to them, and they can set all that up and work with it. We have some customers that use that with migrations, for example, to be able to load up numbers of, hundreds of migration tasks simultaneously, or to use it with deep analytics, like I said, to collect the analytics sets down, to take a look at those. A number of different ways you can do it. You can do everything from mounting a server all the way through analysis to archiving and everything through APIs. Sure.
Awesome. Damika, I'm just going to give you the last word. I know we set out to talk a lot about our partnership with NetApp and how we can help NetApp customers, get to the cloud faster and save costs. Final thoughts or comments on that and the partnership in general?
Absolutely. So please remember, we have been a partner of NetApp for over 5 years since inception of Comprise. And we are heavily engaged in focusing on any new releases for NetApp, and we work with essentially all NetApp major product lines. So we work with E-Series, AFF, StorageGRID, and all of the cloud deployments they've recently released, like CVO and CVS. And we will continue to support NetApp in all ways, all the time. So we're excited to be their partner. We will continue to partner with them, and thanks for joining the webinar today.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Great session. We are getting more questions coming in, so I encourage you to connect with your Comprise account manager, or go to our website and click on the demo request, and we'll dive deeper into your specific use cases. But thank you again for everyone for joining, and we look forward to connecting with you. Have a great day.